Hello everyone and welcome back to our share in Dirshu B'Halacha. We are holding on Reish Nun Hey Amid Aleph. We are in Siman Shin Pei Vav, and hopefully, we're near the bottom of Reish Nun Hey Amid Aleph, and hopefully we'll do Reish Nun Hey Amid Beis as well. So we're holding in Siman Shin Pei Vav, and we're up to Sif Gimel, and we are discussing Shetufei Mevuos. So just to recapture what we had discussed yesterday, the same way we have a din of Eruv Chatzeros, the Chazal asered to transfer something from one of the houses, one of the batim in a Chatzer to the Chatzer without making an Eruv Chatzeros, because the houses in the Chatzer, those are meyuchad for the family, for the person who lives in that bias, and the Chatzer is a common property that serves all of the batim in the Chatzer, and therefore Chazal were afraid that if they're going to allow you to transfer something from the house to the Chatzer, it might feel like you're transferring something from a Rishus HaYachid to a Rishus HaRabim, and then you'll come to make a mistake, and you actually will move something from a Rishus HaYachid Daraisa to a Rishus HaRabim Daraisa. So to counter that, they said you can't transfer something from the house to the Chatzer unless you make an Eruv Chatzeros. By making an Eruv Chatzeros, we join all the houses in the Chatzer, and now it's as if everybody lives together in one place in the Chatzer, and now instead of there being many individual houses and then one Chatzer that serves all of them, now the Chatzer is only serving one house. So that's to remind us we shouldn't come to be over on a Daraisa. The same way we have a Shetufei Mevuos. When you have a Mavui and the Mavui opens on to multiple Chatzeros, so again, the Mavui feels like more of a public thoroughfare than the Chatzeros do, because the Chatzer serves only the houses that are in its Chatzer. The Mavui is serving many Chatzeros. So when you compare the Mavui to the Chatzer, the Mavui feels like more of a Rishus HaRabim than the Chatzer. So Chazal were afraid, if you're going to be allowed to transfer a Keli Shashavas Babayis in one of the Chatzeros to the Mavui, again you might come to transfer from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. So therefore the Chazal said, in order for you to transfer something, a Keli Shashavas Babayis, in one of the Chatzeros to the Mavui, you have to join all of the Chatzeros together in a Shetufei Mevuos. And by doing that, now instead of us looking at this Mavui, that this Mavui serves, let's say, 3 Chatzeros, we have now merged all the Chatzeros together into one Chatzer. And now the Mavui only serves one Chatzer. So that's the concept of Shetufei Mevuos. Now we pick up with Shin Pei Vav Sif Gimel. Says the Mechaber, Kechol Mishpetei Eruvei Chatzeros, just like all of the dinim that we have seen previously, since Siman Shin Samach Vav, all of the detailed laws of Eruvei Chatzeros, Kechol Mishpetei Eruvei Chatzeros Vishiurai, and the minimum measurement for Eruvei Chatzeros, we said that when a group wants to get together and make an Eruvei Chatzeros, every house in the Chatzer has to make a contribution to the Erev. And we said that there's a minimal amount of pas that each household has to contribute to the Erev. That amount was a gregaris, the volume of a dried fig. And up to, if you have, let's say, up to 18 households. Once you have 18 households, you've already contributed now 18 gregaris. 18 gregoris is the amount of food that the Chazal said that's enough for mazain shtei su'udos. That's enough for 2 meals. Once you hit 18 gregoris, now it doesn't matter even if you have 1,000 households in the Chatzer. Once you have 18 gregoris, that's enough. So the same way there's a minimum share by an Eruvei Chatzeros, there's also a minimum share by Shetufei Mevuos. By Shetufei Mevuos also, the minimum contribution has to be the volume of a gregaris. And again, once you hit 18 gregoris, now you're covered no matter how many households you're joining together in this Shetufei Mevuos. V'she'ishtaim areves b'shviloi. We also saw previously, when we discussed the halachos of Eruvei Chatzeros, that the wife of an individual, the wife of a homeowner in the Chatzer, she could make the contribution to the Erev on behalf of her husband. So too by Shetufei Mavuais. If you go to somebody who lives in one of the Chatzeros in the Mavui, and you go to him, and he's the one who's going to make the contribution on behalf of his Chatzer to the Shetufei Mavuais, and he's not home, and his wife wants to make the contribution instead of him on his behalf, she can do that. The wife could make the contribution to the Shituf. Vishem Arvin Shaloi L'Daitoi Imena Bayis Pasuach Elo L'Chatzer Achas. And we also saw, let's say you can't get somebody from one of the Chatzeros. You go into the Chatzer, you want to get a contribution to the Shituf, and nobody's home. So we said you could do it Shaloi Midaitoi. He doesn't have to be aware. So you could be Mezakeh him. You could go ahead and you could say, you know what, this should be his contribution to the Shituf. You could do it Shaloi L'Daitoi, as long as his house only opens up onto one chutzner. Now, this goes back to what we saw earlier in Iruvei Chatzeros. This gets a little bit complicated. This is in Shin Samach Zayin. When you have a house that opens up onto two Chatzeros, then the laws become a little bit complex. Can one of the Chatzeros be Ma'ariv Shaloi L'Daitoi? Now it depends. If somebody has a house that opens up onto two different Chatzeros, now he really has an option. Maybe he wants to be Ma'ariv with one of those Chatzeros, but he doesn't want to be Ma'ariv with the other Chatzer. So then we have to look. Which Chatzer does he usually use? Which Chatzer is he usually Ma'ariv with? So once a house opens up onto two different Chatzeros, now it gets a little complex what you could do without his knowledge. If the house opens up, let's say, onto Chatzer A and Chatzer B, and you live in Chatzer A, and you want to join him in your Erev Shaloi Midaitoi without his knowledge, well, maybe he doesn't want to be joined with your Erev. Maybe he only wants to join with the other Erev. So not necessarily is it a schus for him, and therefore you wouldn't be allowed to do it Shaloi Midaitoi. So I would refer you back to Siman Shin Samach Zayin, where you could see the details of this. But in any case, this is also going to apply to Shetufei Mavuos. If you want to go to this house that opens up onto two Chatzeros, and you want to collect from him a contribution to a Shetufei Mavuos, it gets a little bit complex. Which Chatzer does he represent if he wants to give a contribution? But if his house only opens up onto one Chatzer, then you could get a contribution from him to the Shetufei Mavuos, even Shaloi Midaitoi. V'shekatan yachal ligvaisai. We also saw by Iruvei Chatzeros that a katan, a minor child, could go around to all the houses in the Chatzer, and he could be the one that collects the pas for the Erev. He doesn't have to be a gadol to collect the pas for the Erev. So too, if you want to send around a katan to the individual Chatzeros that open up onto the Mavui, a katan could be the one who collects the food for the Shituf. He doesn't have to be a gadol. We also saw by Iruvei Chatzeros that really, like we do nowadays, one person could get up with a box of matzahs, and he could say, I'm being mizaka, he hands it off to somebody else, and he says, look, you accept this box of matzahs as the Erev on behalf of everybody who lives in the Chatzer. You don't need their das, and one person can be mezaka for everybody. So too, by Shetufei Mavuos. One person can be mezaka all of the Chatzeros, and he could say, here, accept this box of matzahs as the Shituf on behalf of all the Chatzeros that open up onto the Mavui. V'she'im, the parentheses over here, the Ramah, V'she'im hayu shutafin ein tzrichim la'arev. We also saw a din earlier by Iruvei Chatzeros. Let's say you have three houses that open up onto a Chatzer. So these three Yidden that live in the Chatzer, if they want to be able to transfer a Keli Sheshavas Babayis from their houses into the Chatzer, they need an Iruvei Chatzeros. Now, what does the Erev do? Like the word Erev implies, it merges them together. So how are you merging them together? They're each making a contribution to a pas. They're each making a contribution to the box of matzahs. We're putting the box of matzahs in one house. And now we say it's as if we all live in that together. in that house, because we all have a share in that box of matzahs. So what does an Erev do? An Erev merges these people. Well, let's say Ruvain and Shimon and Levi lived together in a chutzner, and they didn't make it a Ruvain Chatzeros, but they happened to be business partners. And as part of their business, they are partners in Pas. They own bread together in Shutfis. They don't have to make an Erev. They already own Pas together in Shutfis, in partnership. If that bread that they own in partnership is located in one of the houses in the Chutzner, so they're already merged. They don't have to make a new Erev. They're merged by virtue of their business partnership in that Pas. That Pas is essentially the Erev. So too over here by Shetufei Mevuos, Kach Dine Shituf, the Mechaber says. When it comes to Shitufei Mevuos, also, if the people who live in the different Chatzeros that open up onto the Mavoi happen to be business partners, so they're already business partners in food together, and that food that they own in joint partnership is located in one of the Chatzeros of the Mavoi, they don't have to make a Shituf, because essentially they already have a Shituf. Let's stop here for a second and let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Yud Daled. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Kechol Mishpatei Amavur B'Siman Shin Samach Vav. All of the detailed halachas of Eruv Chatzeros that we saw previously in Siman Shin Samach Vav, V'Shiyurai, and the minimum amount of pas that you need to make it Eruv Chatzeros, Mavur B'Siman Shin Samach Chesiv Gimel, that we saw in Shin Samach Chesiv Gimel, and that's the gregeres, the volume of a dried fig for each household. And we saw the halacha by Eruv Chatzeros that the wife could make the contribution to the Erev on behalf of her husband, B'Siman Shin Samach Zayin, that we saw in Shin Samach Zayin. And also in Shin Samach Zayin we saw the halacha that we could make an Erev on behalf of somebody even without his knowledge, because it's considered a schus, it's considered a benefit for him, and Zakin la'adam shaloi b'fanav. You're always allowed to do something on behalf of somebody else if it's a schus. If it only helps him, you could do it on his behalf even without his knowledge. V'shekatan yakal igvaisai, and the halacha that a katan, a minor child, is allowed to collect the pas v'di Eruv Chatzeros b'Siman Shin Samach Vav Siv Gimel. V'she'echad yakal azakos l'kulam sham Siv Tes, and in Shin Samach Vav Siv Tes we saw the halacha that one person could pick up the box of matzahs, give it to somebody else, and ask him to be mezakah for all of the people in the Erev, and that will be everybody's contribution to the Erev. And the halacha that by Eruv Chatzeros, if the people who live in the Chatzar are already partners in Pas, they don't have to make a separate Erev. That we saw in Shin Samach Zayin, in Sif Yod Aleph, in the Ramah. Now let's go back up to the Mechaber. Let's look at the words of the Ramah. It's 2 lines from the bottom. And over here the Ramah is going to detail a little bit. What does this mean? That if the people who live in the different chatzeros that open up to the mavoi, if they have already a business partnership, then they don't have to make a shituf. What does that mean? Says the Ramah, Haga, va'afilu hayam meshutaf im shcheinav b'schayra. Let's say that this is only a business relationship. The partnership that they have has absolutely nothing to do with an erev or a shituf. They didn't enter into this partnership as a way of forming an Erev or making a Shituf. They happen to be partners in a grocery distribution. So that they have a business partnership in food. So, Afilu hayom meshutaf im shcheinav b'schayra, and here is a key phrase, Lozeh b'yayin v'lozeh b'shemen, which literally means that he has a shutvis with one in wine and with one in oil. Then ain't tzarich lehishtatef, they don't have to make a separate shituf. The scenario that the Ramah is describing over here is as follows. Let's say you have a mavoi that opens up onto 3 different chatzeros. So you have chatzer A, chatzer B, and chatzer C. Now these are very business savvy people, the people that live in these 3 chatzeros. And let's say you have 3 Yidden living in each one of these chatzeros. And the 3 Yidden who live in Chatzer A have a business partnership with the 3 Yidden that live in Chatzer B. They make wine together and they sell wine together. Okay, so the people who live in Chatzar A and the people who live in Chatzar B have a shutvis together in wine. And the people who live in Chatzar A also have a partnership, a business, with the people who live in Chatzar C. And their partnership is in oil. Okay, so you have the three Yidden in Chatzar A, have one business in partnership with the three Yidden in Chatzar B, that's in wine. They also have another business partnership with the people who live in Chatzar C in oil. Now, the people who live in Chatzar B and Chatzar C, they have no partnership together. They each have a partnership with the people who live in Chatzar A, but together they have no partnership. Now we have this wine and this oil. I'm jumping the gun a little bit because I'm skipping ahead what the Ramah is going to say. This wine and this oil were put together in one keli. It doesn't mean that all of their wine and all of their oil was put together in one keli. They have, let's say, a big business. But they took some of the wine and they took some of the oil, enough for the minimum share of a shetufei mevuos, and they put it together in one keli. And that keli is located in one of the chatzeros. So now let's say in Chatzar B, you have a barrel, and in that barrel there is wine and there is oil. And that wine belongs to the people who live in Chatzar A and Chatzar B, and the oil belongs to the people who live in Chatzar A and Chatzar C. So, together in this barrel, you have representation of all three chatzeros. Now, the people who live in all three chatzeros actually don't have a partnership in everything together, because like I said, I'm sorry, bear with me, my wife's phone is ringing. Let me turn it off. Okay. Because like I said, Chatzar A and Chatzar B own the wine together. Chatzar A and Chatzar C own the oil together. But Chatzar B and Chatzar C don't own anything together. But you do have, in this one barrel, you do have representation of all three Chatzeros. That is enough to make a partnership that now Chatzar A, Chatzar B, and Chatzar C do not have to make a shetufei mevuos. Now let's see this again inside. Hagah. Even if the people living in the Chatzeros of the Mavui have a partnership together in business, so that one of the Chatzeros has a partnership with one of the other ones in wine and with one of the other ones in oil, ein tzarich lehishtatef. That's enough to join all three of the Chatzeros together, and now they don't have to make another shetufei mevuos. The business partnership that they have is enough. For who sheyiyeh bekli echad. As long as the water and as long as the wine and the oil are together in one keli, and this is brought down from the Torah Siman Shin Samach Vav. Now let's go down into the Mishnah Berurah in Eis Katan Tes Vav, 2 lines from the bottom. Lazeh b'yayin v'lazeh b'shemen. One of the Chatzeros has a partnership with one of the other ones in wine and with one of the other ones in oil. Ritzayna Loimar, what the Ramah means to say is, Afal pi shehein shnei mine mashke. Even though the wine and the oil are two different types of fluids which do not mix, wine and oil don't mix, afilu hachi, still, kevan shehein b'kli echad, since they are together in one keli, nikra shituf, that's called a partnership. It merges them together. Afal pi sheloi hunchu sham l'shem shituf. Even though it wasn't even placed there to create a shituf. It's only there together because they happen to be in business together. Now, you see over here in this Mishnah Berurah that there is another chiddush. This is what I want to be clear on. There are two different chidushim over here. One chiddush is that even though Chatzar A, Chatzar B, and Chatzar C do not all three of them own anything together in partnership, two of the Chatzeros own the wine together in partnership, and two of the Chatzeros own the oil together in partnership, but the three of them do not own anything together in partnership. Still, if you put the wine and the oil in one keli, that merges the three Chatzeros together, and they don't need a shituf. That's one chiddush. An additional chiddush the Chavetz Chaim just brought out over here in Ois Katan Tezvav is that even though you're putting wine and oil together in one barrel, and the nature of wine and oil is that they do not mix, so the wine and the oil are not truly ma'uriv, they're not really mixed together, they stand apart, still, since they're in one keli, that's enough to merge all three chatzeris together, and they don't need a shituf. The bottom line in the Mishnah Berurah is cut in tezayin, b'kli echad. This only works if the wine and the oil are together in one keli. Ritzaynoi loymar. What the Ramah means to say is, schera shel kol hashloisha shutfin. You have merchandise that represents all three chatzeros, all three partners are together in one keli. Aval b'shnei kelim. But let's say the wine that belongs to Chatzer A and Chatzer B was in one keli, and the oil that belongs to Chatzer A and Chatzer C are in a separate keli. Afilu imahaya shutvis kulam bimin echad yayin oy shemen ukai gavna. Even if it wouldn't be two different types of liquids, even if it would both be wine or both be oil, gam kein loy mahani, then it wouldn't work, because then you have no way of merging all three. Even though we saw earlier in Hilchas Eruvei Chatzeros, in Shin Samach Vav Siv Dalet, Mavur over there was explained. Sometimes you could have the pas of the Eruvei Chatzeros separated in two kelim, because we said in Shin Samach Vav Siv Dalet, what happens if you wanted to take all the matzah for the Eruv and you want to put it in a keli, but you start putting all of the matzah into the keli, and now there's no more room. So we said if there's no more room, you could overflow into a second keli, and even though the Eruv is in two separate kelim, it's still an effective Eruv to merge everyone together. So the Chavetz Chaim is pointing out, even though there is a case in Eruvei Chatzeros where we said that the pas could be in two separate kelim and the Eruv is still effective, over here by Shituf, in this case where we're talking about a business partnership, we're telling you that the merchandise that belongs to all three Chatzeros must be in one keli. It cannot be in two separate kelim. And now the Chavetz Chaim is going to explain why. Ayin Chum, Hasam Shani. Over there in that case by Eruvei Chatzeros it's different. Shenishtatvu meikar l'shem shituf mavuos. This is actually not 100% meduktuk, because in Shin Samach Vav we're talking about Eruvei Chatzeros, not shitufei mavuos. But in any case, over there in Shin Samach Vav, when we said that there's a case where you could have the Eruv in two separate kelim, over there we're talking about a case where this is pas that was collected for the purpose of an Eruv. We want to put it together in one keli, but it doesn't fit, so it overflows into a second keli. So we allow you to do that because it was all collected to be one Eruv. You're just putting it in two separate kelim because you have no choice. You're not trying to separate it. You want it to be one Eruv, but you're stuck. You have to let it overflow into a second keli. Aval hacha, but over here, that's not what we're talking about. Over here, the wine and the oil that we're speaking about over here was never collected to be a shetufei mavuos. It's a business partnership. What we're saying is, since the people who live in the three chatzeros happen to be merged together through their wine and through their oil business partnership, they don't have to make a shituf. But it was never put together to be a shituf. So haval haka the lav l'shem shituf hunachsham, when the wine and the oil were never placed together to be a shituf, ela l'schayra, it's only a business partnership, b'kli echad in. So then if it all goes into one keli, we will allow it to take the place of a shituf, b'shnei kelim loy. But if it's in two separate kelim, so then it doesn't look like a shituf, it doesn't smell like a shituf, and it was never collected as a shituf. So then we're not going to let it work as a shituf. But if it's a business partnership and it's in one keli, then we'll say it takes the place of a shituf. Veda, continues the Chavetz Chaim, Veda, and you should know, this Ramah that says that you can have these two business relationships between Chatzer A and Chatzer B and Chatzer A and Chatzer C, and if they're together in one keli, it serves to make a shituf. That comes from the opinion of the Tur. However, most poskim do not agree with this. The daitam, in their opinion, is the beyayin v'shemen shehem shnei minim, that we were dealing with wine and oil, which are two separate liquids that do not blend, she'ein ru'uyin lehisarav yachad, which by nature do not combine. Afilu kishahayu mu'uravin b'kli echad gam kein samchin aleim le'inyan shituf. These opinions hold that this does not work. They disagree with this Ramah. You have two separate business relationships, and you have two fluids that do not mix together. Even if you put them in one keli, this cannot take the place of a shituf. V'ayin b'bir halacha. I'll point you to a very interesting bir halacha. Bir halacha dibra mascha lozeh b'yayin ulozeh b'shemen, which is located on Reish Nun Hey Amud Aleph. It's a very interesting bir halacha because he says it's not only two fluids that don't mix. How about if if the business relationship that they had was in a bakery? So now, Chatzar A and Chatzar B have a relationship in challah, and Chatzar A and Chatzar C have a relationship in babkas. Now, when you take a babka and you take a challah and you put them together in one keli, they don't mix. Babka and challah don't mix together. So there are those opinions that say that the same way these shitas hold that oil and wine in one keli don't take the place of a shituf, they would also say that babka and challah don't take the place of a shituf. It's only things that mix. So if you would have one business relationship in wine and another business relationship in wine, and you pour all the wine together in one barrel, okay, wine mixes with wine. So that could make a shituf, but things that don't mix don't make a shituf. Okay. Let's continue now with the Mechaber in Sif Daled on the top of Reish Nun Hey Amud Beis. Says the Mechaber, Mishtatvin b'chol minei meichel. You could combine into a shetufei mevuos with any kind of food. It does not have to be pas. Va'afilu arba v'chamisha minei meichel mitztarfen. You could also use 4 or 5 different types of food. So you could have one chatzar is going to make its contribution with bread. Another chatzar is going to make its contribution with chocolate, and another chatzar is going to make its contribution with another type of food. And guess what? They could all merge together to make one shituf. They all combine together to give you the minimum share that you need to make a shetufei mevuos. Says the Mishnah Berurah cut in Yud Zayin, Lamazit Shtei Su'udais, Shehu Shira Roy Afle Elef B'nei Adam. The reason the Mechaber picks on Mazin Shtei Su'udais is because, like we said, once you have Mazin Shtei Su'udais, that covers 1,000 households. So even if you have different types of food, it all combines together. In the context of a Ruvei Chatzeros. Now let's go to Sif Hey in the Mechaber. B'chol minei meichel mishtatfin. Like we just said, you could use any type of food to create your shetufei mevuos. Chutz migudgedoniyos shehukshu lezera, with the exception of coriander stalks that already they matured to the point where they already have gone to seed. They have seeds in them, and they're already hard. So those are not edible. Those are no longer edible. V'tavlin. You also cannot use spices to go ahead and make a shetufei mevuos. And like the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, you can't make a shituf out of spices because spices are not royal achila. You don't sit down with a spoon and start eating paprika or eating black pepper. So you can't use that to make an eruv. Poilin yeveshim, or dry beans. You can't make a shituf out of dried beans because you can't eat dried beans. You can't open up a bag of cholent mix and start eating the beans. Raw, it's not royal achila, it has to be cooked. V'loi ba'alei bitzalim sheloi godlu oirech zeres. Nor can you use onion leaves. That's the growth that grows up out of the onion if it did not yet reach the length of a zeres. Because when the leaves of the onion bulb are that immature, they are not royal achila at that point. I think the Mishnah Berurah says, mazik la'adam eresh shebehen. At that point in their maturity, when they're so small, there is a, what's the word I'm looking for? An eres. Literally, eres is a venom. It means the liquid of the plant is like an acid. it's too strong and it's harmful for a person. So that's not something, that's not a mine Michael that you can make a shitov with. V'loi kemeinu patrios, nor can you use truffles or mushrooms, and for that we'll wait for the Mishnah Berurah to see why. V'loi bekafnios, you can't make an eruv using unripe dates, because unripe dates are also, they're not royal achila. V'loi ba'adoshim, nor can you use lentils. This is talking about raw lentils. It has to be a food that's readily edible the way it is. You don't eat raw lentils. V'loi b'chitim u'sa'irim, or with raw wheat or raw barley. V'loi b'yerek shehu bashel, v'loi bashel, not with a vegetable that is only partially cooked. Sometimes you have a vegetable which could be eaten raw. You have carrots that can be eaten raw. They can also be eaten cooked. Sometimes you have a vegetable that can only be eaten cooked. If you have a vegetable that's hard, that's only partially cooked, so now it's not something that's royal achila. V'loi b'mayim levadam, nor can you make an eruv out of plain water. V'loi b'melach levada, or plain salt. Avalim ervam yachad, but if you took water and salt and you combined it, avalim ervam yachad mishtatfim behem, water and salt together, that you could use for an eruv, because that was a dip that they used for bread. So now it's a minei Michael. Some say the dafka kishanas l'seichen shemen, that this brine is only usable as an eruv if you add oil to it, because then it makes it a dip. There are those opinions that say that you can make an eruv with spices, because since spices are something that you do use as part of your meal, you do dip things into spices and eat them, so that gives it enough of a chashivas as a minei Michael that you can make your shitov out of spices alone. Now let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah Eis Katan Yud Ches. We said you can't use coriander stalks, shehukshu lezera, ritzayin aloymar. What the Mechaber means to say is, shehukshu hakalachim ke'etz, that the stalks have already become hard like wood. Shekvar tzamach behem zera, they've already gone to seed, there's already seed sprouting in the stalks, the kashim la'achila, and at this point in its development, it's not edible. Your test for tavlin, you can't make an eruv with spices, the lav b'nei achila ninu, because this is not considered a Michael. Spices are not an independent Michael. Chaf u'parlin yiveshim, dried beans, she'ein necholin k'moi she'ein chayin. You don't eat beans raw the way they are. Elo la'achar bishulon, you have to cook them first. U'be'inon she'yehei royu la'achloi achshav. And for the food that you're going to make the shituf with, it has to be something that's edible right now. V'loi ba'alei b'tzalim, not with the leaves of onions, shekashim heim la'achila, because they're not really edible. Alvo b'b'tzalim gufa, but with onions themselves, ma'arvin bahem, you could make an eruv out of them. Im yesh ben kedei lalafes mazoin shtei seudais. What's the minimum share of onions to make a shitufei mevuos that's going to cover a multitude of people, more than 18 households? That you would need the amount of onion that you need, lalafos bayas apas. That means it's a condiment. The onion is considered a condiment. Now, a condiment is something that you eat together with something else. So they would take onion and they would eat it together with bread. In order to have enough onion so that you could cover more than 18 households, you don't need the volume of 18 groigros. What you need is, you need the volume of onion that you would use as a condiment for bread in the volume of 18 groigros. Because onion is a condiment. So if the leaves of the onion are mature enough that they themselves are considered onion, so then that's the minimum share. The amount that you would use as a condiment for the volume of 18 groigros of bread. Chavei shalai gadlu, we're talking about immature onion growth, that these leaves did not yet grow to the length of a zeres. Sheba'oichen kol kaktanim, when they're so immature and they're so small, mazik la'adam eresh shebehen, then the acid in them is harmful to a person. Avalim kfar gadlu ha'olin shir zeres, but once they developed already to that size, hareihem kibitzalan atzman, now they themselves have a din of onion. Uma'arvim behem kishiesh behem shir lalafis behem mazit shtei sudais, if you have enough to be a condiment for the volume of 2 meals worth of bread, that's enough to be used to make an Erev even for a multitude of families. Chav Gimel v'loy b'kmein u'patriyos. You cannot use truffles or mushrooms for your Erev. Says the Mishnah Berurah, afilu mivushalim. This is true even with cooked mushrooms or cooked truffles. V'atam, the reason for this is, she'ein adim ragal lismay chalehen. A person does not rely on truffles and mushrooms for his meal. Loy mak masuda, not to make a meal out of them by themselves. V'loy mak mas lifton, also not as a condiment. Ve'enan boyen elaba kroi, because this is a food that you only bring to the meal once in a while. So it's not looked upon as a chashav amine meichel that we're going to say, oh, you see this plate of mushrooms or this plate of truffles? This is a meichel that we got together and now we have it in the chatzar, and this means that all the chatzeros are joined together in one chatzar. This is not a meal. This is not something that's used for a meal. If it's onions that's used as a condiment for a meal on a regular basis, so okay, we have something chashav over here. We have the amount of condiment that we need for mazid shtei seudos. But when you have mushrooms and truffles, that's not looked upon as a meal. Says the Mishnah Berurah weiter, Ubebir Agra Cholik al Zeh, the Gra disagrees with this. V'daitay debarvin b'kmeim u'patrius mivushalin. He says if the mushrooms and the truffles are cooked, so then it is an edible, Michael, and then there's no reason you can't make an Erev with it. Chav dalad v'loy b'kafnios, you can't use immature dates, unripe dates. Heim tamarim ra'im, these are poor quality, unripe, undeveloped dates. Shloi bashlu kol tzarchan, that never ripened. Chavhei v'loy ba'adashim v'loy b'chitim, not with lentils or wheat. Hainu kisheim chayim. This is talking about raw lentils and raw wheat. T'alav b'nei achilin inu, because they're not considered edible. V'hu adin oiriz v'doichen. This is true with rice or spelt, v'kitnios, yevation, other types of beans. She'ein ru'uyin lechol k'moishein chayin, which are not edible the way they are raw. Dein ma'arvin behem, you can't make an Erev out of them. Kasav Rashba, the Kloyos ma'arvin behem. The Rashba says that in Kloyos are like little, I forgot what it's called, kernels, like lightly roasted kernels of wheat. You could make an Erev, that is considered edible. How about if you have a vegetable, is cut in chavav, shu bashal v'lei bashal, that is cooked but not cooked, meaning it's only partially cooked, that you can't use for a shitov, shekasher ein la'achila, because again, they're difficult to eat. Aval bashal legamri, but if it's fully cooked, oy chai legamri, or fully raw by a vegetable like a carrot that's eaten raw, marvin behem, then you can use it for an erev or a shitov. V'dafki yiraka shadaka lechel chayin, but only by a vegetable that's normal to eat raw. The Kasav Amagad Avram, the lefes didanu b'klal hazeh, that turnips of ours would be included in that variety of vegetables that are eaten raw. So if they're completely raw, you can make an erev or a shitav out of them, or if they're fully cooked, but not if they're only partially cooked. V'loy b'mayim levadam, you can't use water on its own. Talab midi de mazainu, because water is not mazain. It's not food for a meal. Avol, that's cut and chavches. If you mixed it with water, if you mixed salt and water, you can use it, because that's a condiment for bread. You dip bread into brine. The minimum amount of brine to make an erev for a multitude of people, for more than 18 households, would be the amount of brine that you need to be a condiment for bread that's mazin shtei sudos. There are those opinions that say that you can only use brine when you mixed in oil. Let's say you collected oil for the shituf, but you didn't have the minimum shear to cover the amount of households. But you also have brine that you collected from some households, so you can mix the brine together with the shemen for the minimum shear. The Mishnah Berurah says that Lamaisa we paskin like the first opinion that the brine is good on its own, you don't need to mix in oil. There is an opinion that you can use spices for your erev or for your shituf, because you use it to spice your foods. So it's chashav enough to make an erev. V'shiurai kechatzi revius, and the minimum share of spices would be like a half of the volume of a half a revius. In a difficult situation, in extenuating circumstances, you could follow this opinion that you can make an erev out of spices. However, the Chavetz Chaim says you should not make an erev out of pepper, because that's mamish not eaten alone. Ken kasav achai odam. Some Seif held that pepper is no different than another spice. I don't know what measurement the Chavetz Chaim is referring to when he talks about a loit. Maybe a liter? I don't know. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Mir Hashem, tomorrow we will pick up from Sif Vav. And we're getting close to the end of the summer. Mir Hashem, I'll see you all live soon enough. Thank you for joining. Be well.